fundraisers. Our collabs have been with Evergreen Valley High School, and we hosted 2 movie nights with it, Halloween and Christmas. And we also have a Christmas raffle fundraiser. The fundraiser we extended the deadline, so I don't have really reports on profits for that yet, but it's been going pretty good so far. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about a community service idea / proposal that is concerned with international foreign language tutoring. So the general idea was to create a program where students learning foreign languages can get free peer tutoring from like a native speaker abroad. For example, if I was like learning Spanish in school and I was looking for some extra help or just somewhere I can further apply my skills, I would be able to join this program ideally and be paired with a high school student, maybe like in Latin America or Spain, who is a native Spanish speaker, also slightly proficient in English, who would volunteer as a tutor. And the idea is a little bit like broad, so I've decided to take some steps. I decided to first start in China, just because I had a couple of relatives there, so it's easier to contact some schools there. And then so we advertised the free English tutoring for these students, and then we went ahead and recruited some high school students from Valley Christian High School who were proficient in Mandarin to volunteer as tutors. To the side, I have a couple of pictures, me and one of my students, and then some text messages about like phrases that we were working on. So the results were that currently we have 7 Valley Christian High School students tutoring 10 students from these various schools in Jiangxi, China, which is a province in China. And then through the online platform WeChat, and in the first semester we've totaled 50 plus community service hours. So some of the benefits of this program was more engaged and like applicable learning, like language learning for the students, I think. So like I think even when you have a really good like teacher in school, it's sometimes hard to master a foreign language in like a classroom setting. And I think this program could be a really great way for students to further apply their skill in communication with like an actual person, but also keep it a low stress environment by having it be peer tutoring. And then I think this another benefit of this program could be an increased sense of like global and cultural awareness, because you're able to speak with someone from like maybe a different country. And then another thing is I think this could be an impactful community service opportunity, because as like this first semester we've seen, and I've talked to some of the other tutors in the program, and they say that it's quite meaningful, that like the time they volunteer is actually really meaningful to these students in China's like education as they're trying to like learn English. So now to how Interact might play a role in this. So I haven't like this program, although I've advertised this to like our Valley Christian Interact Club, I haven't completely linked it with the Interact Club, just because with how the program is right now, it's not inclusive to everyone. Like for example, you'd have to have some kind of proficiency in Mandarin, because right now we are connected to schools in China, and then you'd have to be able to communicate to the students. So I was thinking if we could expand it to other countries through connecting with Interact clubs in these other countries, there would be more languages for students to tutor in or get tutored in. And I think it could be a unique opportunity for like people to, I guess, interact with their peers around the world. And then I think it could be a potential for better connection with the international Interact community. And so I just wanted to ask if this could be a good idea to move forward with, and if you guys have any recommendations or thoughts on it.
Elena, I think it's a fantastic idea and a great one for Rotary to use connections of Rotary clubs with some of the other countries. I can see a great potential if we could line up particularly Spanish speakers to help the people we have who are struggling with difficulties in English. Great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will second that thought and opinion, because I think that you're going above and beyond and reaching further than just what you have in front of you, and I think it's quite fantastic. I think what we can do as a club, and Joan is the chair for youth services, but we can help get you guys connected in with Rotary International and the right folks that can connect you in to, you know, discover these opportunities and possibilities.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And would you be the point person for this?
Yes. Yeah. I was planning on making a team, but so far I'm kind of organizing the program.
You got to get the team. Believe me,
Yeah.
be helpful for you.
Yeah, it's just I didn't want to like push it onto my officers because so far it's just been with schools in China and like not all of my officers speak Chinese.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it'd be cool if we could connect other places as well.
Just to let you know, last week we had a person that was from the what was it, Rotary Vietnam Project.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about a tutoring program that they do with Vietnamese that are trying to learn conversational English, and they use Pacific links. And I put it on our grapevine. I could send you some of the information if you want to look at it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I could get in contact with them.
Yeah, there's no point in reinventing the wheel if the resources are already there, right? So, well, I commend you, Elena. I think this is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I like that you use WeChat. I have that app, but I don't know how to
I
use
have the WeChat also.
Oh yeah, it's quite complicated in the beginning actually. I had to have my mom tell me.
Mm.
Oh, good. Rebecca, and you and I can be WeChat-ters.
No, I talk to you enough in every other platform. Thank you, though. Okay, well, thank you, Elena. We really appreciate it. And I do have your contact information. You have mine and Brian's, and I think Joan's. So we'll be in contact. Okay, you're welcome to join, but I think you have to go back to class in a little bit, or at least get some lunch in you and stuff. So thank you for taking the time for us today, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll keep in contact with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I tell you, as an adult right now, I feel like I don't do enough. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's a very good program.
Yeah.
As an adult right now, I feel like you don't do enough too.
I didn't ask for your opinion, Greg.
Okay, so let's go to our speaker who's here, Sandy Rosenthal. And I have a brief, comments on her, if you would bear with me. Sandy founded the major nonprofit levees.org with 25,000 supporters and chapters in 5 states. While she and her family were evacuated from New Orleans after the hurricane, her new book, The Words, Whisper, and Water, is about how she changed the national narrative about flooding disaster in 2005 from Mother Nature to federal civil engineering mistake. In March of 2019, Sandy unveiled the first of its kind flooded house museum at the site of a major levee breach. Sandy hosts an annual guided levee breach bike tour. These are just a few of the sustainable ways that she separates fact from fiction. For those efforts, Sandy has been honored with numerous awards, including most recently Outstanding Social Entrepreneur of the Year from Tulane University in 2018, and also Most Influential Woman from Mount Holyoke College. I don't know, you can correct me on that.
Mount Holyoke.
Mount Holyoke, okay. Sandy is an advocate for 63% of the American population living in counties protected by levees. She's been married to Stephen Rosenthal since 1979, has 3 adult children and 1 granddaughter. She also has 2 small dogs named Twinkie and Cupcake. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Brian. And I also have an 8-week-old grandson. We both live in San Francisco. So I have a lot of reason to be engaged in what's happening in California. So first I'm going to share my PowerPoint with y'all.
Okay. Yes, you can do it.
Okay, great. Yes, I sure can.
Yes.
Is that, everybody see it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. There, should be there now. Okay, great. Now, I'm going to give you all a gift For those of you who are viewing this Zoom on either a desktop or a laptop, I'm going to share with you a cool trick that you can use on your end whenever you're viewing a Zoom. Does anybody hear a scratching? Somebody might not have muted their screen. Muted
Yes,
themselves?
I hear scratching. Yes.
Yeah. Could there we go. Okay. I figured if I can hear it and I can't hear anything, everyone must hear it. Okay, I'm going to share with you a cool trick that you do on your end that will enhance your viewing experience that you can use every time you're on a Zoom. Okay, so here we go. If you take your cursor and bang it against the top of your screen, a green bar will appear. It may already be there. And at the right-hand side of that green bar is a little black box. Click on that little black box, okay? And a drop-down menu will appear. And the very bottom option is side-by-side view. Click on it. And what that's gonna do is split the screen in two. And you're gonna have the people on one side and my PowerPoint on the other, okay? And I hope some of you have accomplished that. Now, if you see me and only me, you're good, because there's no reason to see everybody right now. I should be the only person you're looking at, okay? So if you see other people besides me, you've got one more thing you need to do. You need to go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen and click on Speaker View. And then you've got me and only me, okay? Now, there's one more thing, a trick I'm gonna share with you, okay? If you look at the box with me in it, and if you look at the left-hand side of that box, you see two little white lines about in the middle of the top and bottom, two little white lines there. And you can put your cursor on that and drag it back and forth, and you can make me bigger or make me smaller. I'd like you to make me as big as possible. And you know why? If I can't be there with you, at least you can see me really big, okay? And that's how you can make me big. And that completes my gift to you. I want to remind you, if anybody has, as I'm giving this talk, if a question pops into anyone's head, just write it in, just write your name and your email in the chat box, and I'll contact you after this is all over. Or you can ask me a question after it was over, okay? All right, enough tools and tricks. Let's go ahead and get the show on the road. Words whispered in water, why the levees broke in Hurricane Katrina. In New Orleans, and I'm going to tell you this right up front, because most people didn't know this, the levees are designed and built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. You all know that now. A lot of people didn't know that August 29th, the day Hurricane Katrina arrived. So after that levee breach disaster 15 years ago, the Army Corps of Engineers blamed anyone or anything except itself for that failure. And they refused to answer any questions until all the studies were complete. 9 months the Army Corps was, okay? 9 months is a long time. And during that time, you know, it's right after the disaster, the entire world watched this happen on TV, and everybody wants to know right now what happened. Nobody wants to wait 9 months. And during that time, the media was putting stories out. You know, the media loves a story. And the Army Corps of Engineers was quiet. And during that time, a critical time in the history of this country, the American people and Congress were being fed a fairy tale. They were given 3 reasons for the flooding. Monster storm. Well, you know, all of New Orleans is below sea level, and you know they're all corrupt down there. All 3 of those things blame us for living in New Orleans, blame us for being in harm's way. And it was all so believable, though. I mean, this is the Army Corps of Engineers. They can't possibly be at fault. I mean, look at the stuff they build, okay? The Army Corps of Engineers has been around for 200 years. They have a sterling reputation. They are responsible, or what they've done already before Hurricane Katrina, was they built tens of thousands of miles of levees along the Missouri, the Mississippi, and the Ohio River. Those rivers and the surge heights went up to 20 feet or more every single year for 30 days or more. And what the Army Corps has done has been incredible, or so we thought. The levees that broke in New Orleans were drainage canals that were only supposed to hold water for a couple of hours and only needed to hold a few feet. Okay? Okay. So a breakthrough with me and my group is when we got our hands on a report to the Government Accountability Office by the Army Corps of Engineers that stated very specifically that the Army Corps is responsible for project design and construction. The locals are responsible for maintenance. Well, if a building falls to the ground, you don't blame the janitor. You blame the architect, the engineer, and the contractor. And in the case of the levees, the Army Corps is all three of those. Keep in mind that the worst breaches were the newest ones, the ones that had been completed in 2000, the 17th Street and the London Canal. You don't need to know that, but yeah, the worst breaches were the new ones. Okay, so I founded the group levees.org and I started asking questions. This was in January. It was many months before those studies would finally come out. And I received immediate pushback. Well, isn't that interesting? I got pushback from the Army Corps of Engineers, who reports to the Department of Defense, and also from an elite trade group called the American Society of Civil Engineers. Huge pushback from those groups. And this reinforced my theory I must be on the right track, and that the Army Corps is to blame, and that had allied itself with a trade group to rewrite history and protect its reputation. Also, there's a lawsuit forming at this time. Well, we noticed that cozy relationship between these two organizations. And so 2 years after the breaches, my organization created a 1 minute long spoof of that relationship. And the trade group did not like that criticism. And this is a letter explaining exactly what they said, but I can paraphrase. They threatened to sue us. Here we were, a little grassroots group. They threatened to sue us if we don't shut up. Well, fortunately, we live in America, and there are laws against that. I'm very happy that the Silicon Valley group Cooley, who instigated all this, were the first people to come to me and offer pro bono assistance to fight that threat of lawsuit. And a local firm called Adams and Reese joined forces with Cooley, and we stood up to the trade group and said, go ahead, sue us if we don't stop talking. Well, the ASCE backed off, and levees.org announced that in a very well-attended press event. So this gives you an idea of the scale that big companies with deep pockets will go to shut up a little tiny group, okay? Because little tiny groups actually have power. We'll talk about that in a bit. Over the next 3 years, my organization put plaques vetted and fact-checked by the Louisiana Office of Historic Preservation at major breach sites. We pushed for reform of the Army Corps. And probably the most well-remembered thing my group did is using IP addresses and back-end tools available to any amateur blogger. We caught the Corps, Army Corps employees sitting at their computers and typing vicious comments to me and my group online. But we caught them with IP addresses. This is back when online commenting was a thing. It was pretty embarrassing for the Army Corps. Well, moving right along. By 2011, on the suggestion of a cherished advisor, he suggested that my organization nominate breach site to the National Register of Historic Places. The reason being, the levee breach event of New Orleans actually did change America as we know it, okay? And so we nominated the 2 breach sites, and this is important because 62% of the American population, almost 2/3, is protected by levees. So it made sense to do this. Well, as I was doing the research for that nomination, and anyone that's nominated anything to the National Park Service, it's a lot of work. And what I had to read the reports of 2008 and 2009 and 06 and 07. A bunch of reports came out later. And I discovered information buried deep inside those reports on like page 300 that was left out of the executive summary. Really important stuff, okay? And the information that these are well-known, y'all might not be familiar with these names, but they didn't know about it either. Who reads the whole report? Most people read the executive summary. And the big picture became really clear that the Army Corps of Engineers is singularly at fault for the flooding of New Orleans, not the storm, certainly not in New Orleans. Katrina was a big deal in Mississippi, not in New Orleans, and not the geography of the city, and certainly not any imagined corruption on the part of the people who live here. In other words, we didn't steal the levy money, okay? That's another nonsense that was probably pumped out in the weeks after the storm. But here we are in 2011, and that fairy tale is common knowledge. What are you going to do? Meanwhile, I had a lot of detractors, which I won't get into. Anyone wants to hear about that fight and battle, all that's in my book. But I did notice that all the people going after me in my group were all quoting a 2006 levy report by University of California, Berkeley. Now, to be fair to the good co-chairs of that report, Drs. B, Seed, and Rogers, it was the first report. It was published without access to other reports, by definition. It was done on a shoestring budget, and it was done under an insane deadline. So what could go wrong, right? A lot went wrong. They had an erroneous conclusion in their report. They concluded that the Army Corps had tried for years to obtain authorization to install gates that would stop the water from entering the city. That would have been the superior solution. But local interaction between the local organizations prevented installation of those gates. And in other words, it's all our fault, right? Except for one thing, it was untrue and a fairy tale. But again, what are you gonna do? So we brought this wrong conclusion to the attention of Drs. B, Seed, and Rogers. And there are good people in this world. They understood the damage that was being done to the people of New Orleans, and they agreed to write a new report that would retract the wrong conclusion and replace it with the right conclusion. The report was published in Water Policy. It was an above the fold story in the New York Times. And the important thing you need to know is the Army Corps made a tragic mistake in the 1980s when they misinterpreted the results of their own study. And they wrongly concluded they only needed to drive steel sheet pilings into the levees 16 feet, 1/6, instead of 46. And when Hurricane Katrina's surge came along, the levees fell over at less than half the water height they were designed to hold, okay? All right, well, after the article came out, all these major media stopped peddling the fairy tale. That nobody admitted they were wrong, of course. They just stopped peddling the fairy tale, and that's okay. And no one got a dime from the lawsuit. It was dismissed because the Flood Control Act of 1928 says the Army Corps cannot be sued should its flood protection projects fail. However, at least the residents of New Orleans could throw off their cloak of shame. They no longer had to go around feeling ashamed of themselves or blaming themselves. It wasn't our fault. So why should California care about any of this? Well, as I already pointed out, 2/3 of Americans live by levees. The good news for the folks in your area is the Santa Clara Valley Water District is very sophisticated, well-funded, and strives for balanced land development and environment, at least more so than most, okay? They may not be perfect, but they're trying hard. The problem with sophistication comes complacency. And when you feel like, oh, everything's taken care of, that's when you're not looking. In this world, bad decisions and bad legislation is passed when they think no one's looking. So always be watching, okay? Well, how do you be watching? Well, I'm going to tell you how. File requests under either the Freedom of Information Act, which is the federal level, or public record requests, which is state level. Get your brother-in-law or somebody to put an attorney cover letter on it. Everyone knows an attorney. Just get their cover letter on it. And it's better that way because then your record request goes directly to their attorney and they can't ignore you. demand acknowledgement within 3 days, and then demand that your request be satisfied in 3 weeks. And if they say to you, oh, we're backlogged, just say, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'll give you 1 extra week. But by law, they're supposed to respond in 3 weeks. And believe me, I've had that happen to me. Give them an extra week. Be nice, but be firm. Leave a paper trail of your questions. Always be polite. And it's hard, but try not to be defensive when they ask dumb questions, and don't give up. I can think of many times where I thought I'd lost and it turned up I'd won that I didn't know it. Okay? So that concludes my talk. I discuss a lot more of this in my book, which is available Kindle, audio, paperback. If anyone has any questions about my book or any questions about anything I've said, just leave your name, first name, and an email in the chat box. I'm going to save it, and then I'll write to you later. Okay, now the best part, questions. So I can't, okay, there we go, I can hear now.
Okay, good.
You want to stop sharing so we all come back to the screen?
Stop, sorry. I thought I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So what are they doing now? I mean, you see,
Good question.
because I happened to visit New Orleans after the hurricane, and we did a bunch of tours and stuff, and they showed that, which I never knew, that the suburbs, where the houses were, a lot of, when the breaches broke, a lot of people died there because the flooding happened and, it was quick, and the people that are left in their homes, nobody knew. So can you explain, is that true? And what are they doing now?
The Army Corps of Engineers was given $14 billion to build a better flood protection system. The people of New Orleans didn't get anything. We didn't get anything to rebuild our homes, our houses, our businesses. But the Army Corps got handed, after their system failed, the Army Corps got handed $14 billion. And Congress said, okay, here you go. Build it right this time. And do it really, really, really fast. I didn't mention that the Army Corps it took 40 years to build what failed 15 years ago. And this time they had to get it built in like 3 years. But that was done. The Army Corps did build us a big, shiny, gleaming new flood protection system. To its credit and their credit, it is a much better system than what we had when Katrina arrived 15 years ago. They have done a good job of addressing the major flaws with the system, but you will not find a single expert, including myself, who will agree that we have the proper flood protection system for a city of our people, population, infrastructure, and what we protect. What we have isn't enough, but it is way better. Mm-hmm. You are on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that was pretty
Okay.
funny, Joey.
A couple of questions, yeah. My family has property and has been wiped out several times in a town in southern Alabama that flooded in 1928 and in 1990, then was rebuilt with sufficient floodgates that survived an even higher effort or a higher flooding more recently. But it's at 194 feet elevation. New Orleans is underwater, if you will. It's below sea level.
Actually, 50% of New Orleans is at or well above sea level. The portions that were developed after 1965 are below sea level, but you're 50% correct.
So can you really get those areas to be flood proof, or do you need to move people from those areas? I mean,
that's a good question. There are portions of the city that were developed in 1965 by the Army Corps of Engineers that, in hindsight, there is a good body of the people who sit around and think, you know, whatever they're called, who say, yeah, you know, maybe New Orleans East, which is where a lot of the residential area, maybe that shouldn't have been built. There's a body of people who believe that, but it's done. It was built and they were flooded, and to relocate all of them, who knows, you know, 100,000 families or something, cost money, and someone has to come up with that money to relocate them. That's what they do in the Netherlands. They relocate people if it turns up there in an unsafe area, but that's not what's done
and
here
in China.
Yeah, they do. So the good news about, as I said, I also understand that the Anderson Dam is being retrofitted right now. They emptied the lake. Well, that's good. Just keep in mind that it's complex and expensive, and I doubt it'll be complete when they say it will be, but it's great that it's being retrofitted. That's the sort of thing that I worry about when I know about an old dam like that. I understand there's a lot of finger pointing about flooding on Coyote Creek 3 years ago, like $100 million damage from rain, I understand. That's so sad. And a lot of the people were so shocked that the rain came up so fast, that the flooding came up so fast. Unless you've lived with flooding like I do here, I live when I have a strong thunderstorm, I go to the window and check to make sure the water's not rising. And when I see it start to rise, I move my car. But if it never happened to you before, it's so sad reading about those families. And I understand there are no levees on the Coyote Creek. So it wasn't levees, it was rain. So, but and then the only other thing I thought was interesting is the this core project involving the Guadalupe River flowing right through downtown San Jose. You know, the core staff who was working on that are called the Guad Squad. So the Corps of Engineers in your area has got a sense of humor. Of course, it's completely different people in your area than in ours, but they've got a sense of humor. They wish I'd never been born over here, but but it sounds like you've got a, sounds to me from what I've read and what I've seen, that the folks of California, partly because they saw what happened to us here in New Orleans 15 years ago. After what happened to us, the governor and a lot of people in California went, oh my goodness, you know, look what happens when levees break. We thought we were protected. Remember I told you the Army Corps was the gold standard, okay? Well, we don't believe that anymore. And neither did the folks in California when they saw that happen. A lot of changes have been done. They've changed the state laws that your levee boards now have to require people with expertise in hydrology and engineering and all these things. So as I said, the flooding of New Orleans actually did change America as we know it, and did make all people safer, whether they know it or not.
Well, I have one other question if no one else does. You've had contested positions with the Army Corps of Engineers and with the American Society of Civil Engineers. So where do you go to get outside expertise that you trust to do analysis?
That is one of the big lamentations, if you will, in that water policy article, which by the way is very readable. It's only 14 pages and very readable. It's written for lay people to understand. And that the big lament was the Army Corps had stopped using peer review of their projects about 40 years ago, and to save money. And it's always good to save money, but not at the expense of good flood protection. So you raise a good point. What the local levee boards are doing here in New Orleans now is we're hiring outside consultants to review the Army Corps specs. Keep in mind though, you can hire outside consultants, and you can comment, and you can too, to the Corps whenever they decide to do something. But nobody has power to tell the Corps what to do or to stop them from doing something. No one can just say, you can't do that. The only thing but what you do have, which I have it, and every citizen in the country has it, you do have the power to scream blue murder and say, this is going to murder us all, this is going to flood us all. And then, as I mentioned before, I don't say any people are bad people. And I know that's totally non-Rotarian. However, there are people making bad decisions, and there are people passing bad legislation, and they're hoping no one will look. And if we just be looking, that we can prevent that from happening. You have so much more power than you have any idea. Each of you right now, more than you have any idea. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
Brian, you're muted.
Well, thank you for the introduction, if you will, into that. And I mean, for me, you said we have so much power. For me, my personal opinion on it is it's probably not like at the forefront of my mind as a priority versus everything else I have aligned in my life, right? So it's good to know that when you talk about, clearly there's people who make bad choices every day. So for me, it's kind of like reassuring to know there's people like you that are paying attention to the things that A, I know nothing about, and B, I wouldn't put at the top of my list to take care of. So thank you.
You're welcome. And do keep in mind that I'm not an engineer. I'm not an
I know,
attorney.
but you care, you're invested, and you commit the time. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I will honestly say it won't make it on my list today or tomorrow to like focus on it. So
understandable.
That was my appreciation.
I did have a question. We don't have hurricanes here. We have atmospheric
We have the Taverniers.
Atmospheric storms. And so that's what happened to Coyote Creek. I mean, it rained like for 1 or 2 days, like really hard. So we do have levees in Sacramento. Did you do any research on that when you're?
Yes, I did. I have, again, if they have the same issues that we have, I mentioned earlier, I feared for California until I saw all the reforms going on, is that the state of California was more in danger of levee breaches than Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi combined, because of levees along the Sacramento River. They could have, salt water could have gotten into the water, to the drinking system, which would have been catastrophic. So a lot of work has been going into fixing that and changing that. The Central Valley has a very good water district too. I wouldn't put them on the same level as Santa Clara Water District, but they're working hard. Right now they're working on getting more funding. And of course the citizens have to vote for funding. I don't know if anybody lives in that area, but you should vote yes to that funding. Very, very critically important to the state of California.
And do you have chapters or stuff, or is it just mainly levees.org? Is that mainly based in New Orleans?
Actually, our 5 chapters: California, Illinois, Florida, Texas, and New York.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't catch it earlier. So when you're talking about many are East Coast states that you're representing, or a little bit further, we're the farthest west. How is California identified as needing this much support or attention?
How is California identified as what?
Needing this much support and attention, because you identified 5 states. How did we make that list?
Again, not so much now, but 15 years ago when we started the California chapter, California was in big time danger of infiltration into the, yeah.
Okay, I might have missed that earlier. Okay, that's it. Okay, cool.
No
worries. Oh my God, how do we make the list? Shoot, I pay a lot of money for this son to live here, and I want to keep it that way. Anyway.
Any more questions? Anybody?
Greg looks suspicious, like he might have one. No. Thank you, Sandy, so much.
And just one last reminder, that if anyone has a question about anything, my book, my organization, anything, how to file a public record request, just put your first name and your email in the chat box. I'm going to save it. In fact, I'm saving it right now, and I'm going to save it again in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no problem. And then And are you, so what we do, our club is part of a district, and there's a district website, and they ask that we, if we find speakers that are valuable, that information that others might want to hear, are you okay with me sharing that information with the district? And they would personally contact you. It's outside of my hands. I would just hand over your information.
Yes, Ms. Rebecca. Yes.
Thank you for your
I have
patience.
one more question for you. How much conflict do you run into with the Environmental Protection Agency in some of the things that you have to do? In other words,
With the what protection?
Environmental Protection Agency. In other words, I've seen situations where you need a levee, but that interferes with wetlands and that sort of thing.
Oh, it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle, but that's the way it is. As like one of the wonderful things about Santa Clara Valley District is that they're focused on development and helping the people, but they're also focused on the environment and not destroying the plants and the animals and the birds. And it's a constant, give and take, push and pull. And that's just the way it's supposed to be. When the Army Corps of Engineers was 40 years late building a protection system, they were whining about the environmentalists and the conservationists. And they basically were told, that's your job. It's your job to keep everybody happy and to have checks and balances. And so yes, it's a constant push and pull, and that's the way it should be. Both sides should matter. People should matter, and the plants and animals should matter. Well, at least that's what I think.
Thanks.
Okay.
Everybody has the right to their opinion. As long as you express it with respect, I can receive it. So Brian's on mute. Again, I'll say thank you, Sandy. And if there's anything else that comes, okay, go for it. Please join us.
Hey, Brian.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Sandy. And we're really glad you were able to speak to us, especially from New Orleans. And I'm glad we were able to do this. And if there's no further questions, I guess that's it, right?
Yeah, no, thank you. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for your attention.
I don't know if you hear my bell, but. Anyway.
Well, yeah, just so you know,